Hello, welcome to Same Blood, where we have conversations with people about life. And today, I have the pleasure with talking with somebody I know literally nothing about. I don't even know his entire name. I just know you as Erskin.
That's lovely. We're going to unpack that.
Yeah, we're going to go there. So first thing we always ask our guests is name, address, social security number, and any other billing information I would need. Anyway, so Erskin, that's literally all I know about you.
It'll all be fake stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So
talk about fake news. You're asking for all that information. There'll be some fake news on this show.
Exactly. So we go by you go by Erskin.
Yes.
Now that's probably not your entire name, but I don't know what information you want to give out on this podcast.
This is kind of like a Robert Frost poem here because we're about to diverge into maybe two different directions. I could go and hit you with Erskin and then my last name, or I could go with my artist name, which is Erskin, and then tack music onto it. So which
Erskin Music?
Which lane do we want to travel in?
So it was Erskin Music was the second lane?
That was one of the lanes.
All right. So what's the other lane?
The other lane is my actual name, Anavitarte.
Anavitarte?
Yep.
Wait, so Erskin Anavitarte?
Erskin Anavitarte.
That's a dope name. I like that.
You said that so well.
Yeah. Well,
Erskin Anavitarte.
I lied when I said I didn't know what it was. I practiced it on the drive over here 17 times. No, that's not true. That's not true at all. Well, thank you, Erskin Anavitarte, for coming on the podcast. It is greatly appreciated. And genuinely, that is all I know about you. What we've just, I didn't realize,
that's probably
I had an idea.
enough.
I think I knew that you were an artist of some kind because I know that my sister, who got you onto our podcast, said that she met you at a wedding.
Can we say her name?
Gabby? Yeah, It's Gabby.
Yeah, that's still her name.
Yeah, it's still her name for now. But she met you at a wedding where you were being a DJ at the wedding?
I was officiating the wedding.
Officiating the wedding.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
I mean,
I thought there was something to do with music there.
They're very similar.
They are very similar. Okay.
Crowd control.
So, Erskin, the apparently officiant of a wedding.
Yes, in that
So
setting.
why did you decide to come on a podcast with somebody you've never met before?
Because the Erskin music side does that all the time.
Ah, okay.
And I don't know if you guys have seen the Erskin music show. As a shout out, I'm going to give a shout out to the Erskin music show because the Erskin music show no longer exists.
Okay. Solid work.
But it's in the past there.
All right, like shout out Lost, catch the next episode, never.
Exactly.
Great times.
That kind of thing.
Well, again, genuinely, thank you for being here.
Yes.
The whole idea behind this podcast is we just want to have conversations with people about life with a couple of basic understandings going into this, right? Because generally speaking, people are very divided right now. We don't even know how to talk to each other. So we are trying to have conversations from a place that looks something like this. I'm going to make some really awesome assumptions about you, right?
Okay.
I'm going to get rid of any, whatever potential assumptions people make about each other. The idea is I'm getting rid of mine. I'm going to put a couple on you.
All right.
And see where it goes. And this starts with this, that I believe you created by God with purpose, value. Because of that, you love and want to be loved. You respect and you want to be respected. You care about your friends, your family, and you have passions, dreams, and goals that you're pursuing in life. And I'm going to make those assumptions about you, and I'll probably be right. And then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I feel like I should have brought my sound effects today because I have a dolphin that I use on my show that usually when you get something that's like, a point,
okay.
I hit the dolphin. So maybe you can do that in editing.
Maybe we'll add the dolphin sound effect.
All those things that you said, you're just ticking off there like the dolphin would have been going crazy.
Well, if you heard dolphins there a second ago, that's why. If you didn't, we're too lazy to do that. We need someone to sponsor dolphin noises. Oh man. Okay. So from that point, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions so the audience can get to know you a little bit, and then we're going to dive into some maybe a little bit deeper subjects.
All right.
And go some places.
Yeah, let's do that.
First thing, favorite snack. Now, I already know the answer to this, but for the people who don't know.
For the people who probably can't see, maybe they can't see, but
or they're listening.
Pistachios.
Okay, and that is a solid choice. And if you're watching, you can see we have a bowl of pistachios here because the next part, as I ask the rest of these questions, we're going to eat some pistachios. So feel free. We're going to dive in here.
Okay, I didn't know what the etiquette was here.
No, you just dive in. There's no etiquette here.
Okay.
We're not professionals.
We're not.
All right, so the second question, it's like a list of favorites. Oh, well, first question about this. Are you a sports fan?
I am.
Okay, so do you have a favorite sport / favorite team?
I probably am going to go with basketball since I played college basketball. at East Tennessee State University. Never miss an opportunity to give a shout out to the Buccaneers, who are having a great season so far.
Go Tom Brady.
They would have won the national championship last year, except the tournament was canceled. March Sadness. And so the Buccaneers are coming back strong this year.
Okay. So college basketball team. Nobody's been that vague yet, but I like it. I dig it. All right. So you
couldn't
have...
tell that I was sponsored by the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. I'm just throwing all this.
Wait, hold on. Do you have sponsors? Man.
You don't?
No, not yet.
Oh.
We're working on it. We're trying to get pistachio manufacturers to sponsor us, but we'll see what happens.
Here we go. This is the episode.
Yeah, this is the episode.
Show them this episode.
Yeah, they're going to sponsor the next one, and their favorite snacks is going to be like, I don't know, Reese's or something. Yeah. We'll see what happens, guys.
You should have a sponsorship with all the snacks that you guys do. With all the snacks that this show does, there should be a sponsor
100%.
To leap into this.
Yeah, that's a good pitch. All right, so if you're out there and you happen to have a large amount of snacks available and money that you would like to sponsor a show with, hit us up. That'll be great. Okay. Anyway, back to the show. So
this is the show. I have
this is the show. Yes, this is 100% the show. Do you have a favorite movie? And let me preface that a little more with the question of, the idea is this is not like maybe what you think is the best movie ever, but the movie that if it's on, you're always going to stop down and watch at least part of it.
Oh, I can tell you what the best movie ever created was. It's Pacific Rim.
Okay.
And hopefully your audience has seen that. If not, there's going to be people in droves going out to get that so they can see these giant monsters called kaiju fighting against giant robots called Jaegers, and they're duking it out over the high seas for supremacy of the earth. It's totally sci-fi, and it's totally awesome. And if you guys are IDBM looking it up right now, it's got great reviews.
IMDb?
Yeah, IMDb.
I mean, you could go to IDBM and just see what happens. I don't know what. Don't do it, probably.
I think that's in a rap song. Don't go there.
Okay, Pacific Rim. Again, man, you've got some of the most unique favorites so far. If any guest on the show.
No one has said Pacific Rim.
Shockingly, no. I've been
almost
surprised.
Offended now.
Yeah, I know. Between
what
that
kind of audience do you have?
Well, not a very big one yet. We're working on it, and with more guests like this, I think we'll get there.
Sponsorship and great movies.
Oh man, we're having too much fun. We're recording this podcast later, I think, than we've recorded any other podcast so far, and it shows if you're listening.
In fact, if they make a Pacific Rim 3, I would like to be in it. I just want to put my acting credentials out there. You can just see what they are. I'm sponsored by Advantage Talent, Nashville, Tennessee, Misty Griggs. So the casting director for Pacific Rim 3, you need to come find one of your greatest fans. It'd be an honor. So
this show just recently turned into a NASCAR event with the sponsors across everybody's chest. I still don't have any, but Erskin has a ton. So pretty excited about this.
Yeah, it's good times, man. And good pistachios.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so that concludes the favorites conversations, right?
Okay. What about you on the other side of that?
My favorite movie?
Yeah.
Shockingly, it's not Pacific Rim. The movie I come back to a lot as for those parameters is probably Remember the Titans. Just because if it's on, I'm always going to watch. Or the movie Sahara. Have you seen that?
That's got what's his name from?
Yeah, Matthew McConaughey.
McConaughey. Yeah. Yep.
And Steve Zahn. And
is that really a good movie?
Man, it's awesome. It's not a deep movie. It's not going to make you think. But then again, you said Pacific Rim, so that doesn't seem like a problem.
All the conspiracy theories abound right now. So Pacific, there could be giant creatures that come up from a crack in the earth from another planet.
I honestly wouldn't be surprised at this point.
Yeah,
I'd be down for that.
2020.
just for a little bit longer.
Just for a couple
and I've got
of days.
a feeling 2021 is just going to be a completely different year.
That's where the monsters come out.
100%. So yeah, probably one of those two movies. Those are just like the most easy watching movies. If they're on, I'm always going to watch something.
Okay.
There's other movies I think are better. But.
So my second choice would have been Nacho Libre.
Okay, now we're talking.
And that comes out a lot.
Yes, it does, and it should because it's one of the best movies in cinema history. Greatly underrated.
I think so.
Yeah, I would put that in probably the top 5 or 10 comedies of all time.
In fact, we watched it last night.
So. Okay. Well, there we go. We've now found something we have in common.
Common ground.
From here, we can continue on with the podcast.
You were like, man, this dude is weird. Ain't nobody heard of Pacific Rim 1, Pacific Rim 2, and he's trying to advocate to get on Pacific Rim 3. I don't know.
No, I've heard of both. I've heard of both of the iterations of Pacific Rim. I saw part of the first one. That's just about it. Okay, so now we're going to dive into the part where we fix the world's problems or create more problems for the world. Those seem to be our only two options.
Here we go.
So you mentioned earlier you were officiating a wedding. So that means that you must be in some way, shape, or form a man of the cloth, correct?
A man of the cloth. Yeah, I have maybe some credentials in that area.
Okay.
I have done ministry on various continents of the world, around the world. And I kind of use that as sort of the base of my music that I do. And so that's something that's not too unfamiliar to me. I've probably only officiated 2 weddings in my entire life, but certainly the one that I did, the ones that I've done, those have been pretty special.
Okay. So as a, well, I guess would you call yourself a minister first or a musician? How would you sort of
I used to call myself as a musicianary because of the way that I travel and kind of have an international audience. But lately I've kind of called myself an artivist because I use my music as a platform to talk about social issues and really try to bring a different level of discussion to some of those things instead of just kind of coming and hitting people with, here's the facts. I'm not trying to be Ben Shapiro or Candace Owens. I'm not trying to come at people like that. I just want to come with music, give people a common point of reference, and then springboard from that.
Okay, that makes sense. An artivist.
Artivist.
All right, cool. I like it. It's a good name. So it sounds like you are fully versed, or at least have a clear picture of the division that we are surrounded by right now in our country, in the world.
Yeah.
And if you were going to concisely kind of explain what the problem is from your perspective, what do you think it is? What's the problem here today?
Ooh, man. Can I throw in a little G.K. Chesterton?
You can throw in whatever you want.
Kind of go that route when asked what the problem of the world is. The problem is me. I am. Can I do that on this show? I think that's probably a great place to start because it starts in a place of humility, actually recognizing that before you point the finger at someone else and what they have done or not done, maybe look at your own inconsistencies and some of the disparities in your own life and see where there's healing and hope in those areas and then move forward from there.
Okay. So a little more introspection would probably serve the world right now.
If we could all do that. If we would all do that.
Right. That makes sense. And that's something that we've talked about on past episodes. One of the things that I've noticed a lot, and it's been sort of a trend over the last couple of years, is this idea that you see online, you see people posting, there's 2 posts, and they'll both come from the same person. And one will be about, my past is my past, my struggles, they are what they are, they make me who I am, don't judge me on who I've been, judge me on where I'm going, right? It's that idea that I'm growing, and so you should look at where I'm going and not look at my past and try to put all of that on me. And then that same person will be like, did you hear what that one person said 12 years ago on a podcast? We should cancel their entire life and destroy their ability to provide for their family. And so it's this really funny view of like, don't apply the rules to me, and I'd rather not look at myself too closely, and I really don't want you to do that if you're going to judge me, but I would like to be able to peer into just every little part of your life and find a reason to destroy it. Yeah,
so there's really a great book, and I don't know if we do book references here, but I'm just about to do one here.
Are you sponsored by them?
No, I'm not sponsored by them, but I would love to have a conversation. If we can ever get Douglas Murray onto the show, his book, The Madness of Crowds, is an incredible book that kind of deals with the sort of a diametric nature of how arguments and crowds go. And I found that extremely helpful in starting to think through some of the issues, even though I think if Douglas Murray and I were having a conversation, I don't know that we would agree on very many of the fundamentals there, but I think how we arrive at argumentation and how we arrive at the need of our day, we would certainly see a lot of those same trend lines.
Well, that's something that I've seen a lot online is actually there's people who have very different ideological bases, very different ideological core beliefs, but they have so much in common in their belief that we need to be able to have an argument on a specific, on like a level playing field. We need to have kind of the rules set up for the discussion, and that's really where the problem is right now. It's not that we have people who have different opinions. It's that the entire rules of the conversation have been so thrown around and so confused and lost, basically, that the idea of having a good-natured or a well-intentioned discussion or even disagreement, it's like that's gone, because you don't even know what you're allowed to disagree on. What are the rules of the conversation? It's like there's that whole idea has been really messed up and really broken, and that's something that I've seen a big push for recently. It's people who are like, man, I disagree with you on everything, almost, but on this, we need to be able to like agree that we can talk.
Right.
And so that seems like that's one of the biggest issues we have right now. Is there's a co-opting of the baseline of conversation, just basic decency and the ability to have a discussion with each other.
Yeah, and I think Murray also does a good job in that book of pointing out that the way that language and culture changes so rapidly, to establish what that baseline is going to change probably in the next year, the next 2 years, next 6 months, and so we're constantly ever, I don't know if we want to call it evolving or devolving to a state where we can't agree upon whatever the categories are that we're trying to have a discussion about. And so that's been a difficulty I've found recently, that we can't arrive at the basis of, okay, everybody agrees on this point, whether it's civility. Well, no, not everybody can agree upon that. Well, let's agree on this point. Well, no, not everybody's going to agree upon that. And that has been problematic to a large degree in our era, our generation. So we move forward trying to establish some of those fixed points of reference for people to help them move forward.
So what fixed points of reference do you think we need to get to in order to have these conversations again?
I'm so glad you asked that question.
That's why I asked it.
So, man, I hate to be just giving shout outs for all the different things that I'm related to, but I think some of what podcasting is I want to help you guys out. You want to help me out. We're kind of in a partnership now, that
100%.
Now that we're on the camera together, now that we get a chance to take the content and use it for various promotional means, you guys get a sponsorship out of this.
Exactly. At least one.
I know I had posted a piece on Candace Owens and asked her to retract a statement that she had made that I felt was completely out of bounds related to George Floyd. And there was a group from New York who saw that, and they came down to Nashville and they shot 3 music videos because they just wanted to be involved in the conversation. It was very similar to some of the conversations that you guys have on this show. And one of the things that we were talking about with their group is just continuing to read, continuing to study, continuing to be in a process where you're learning. And so I think maybe the first point that we can agree upon is just having a humble attitude about things, learning and having the ability to say, okay, what do we need to know about this conversation? Because if you come to the conversation saying, I already know everything here, I already know what you're going to say, I already know everything about you, I could be completely wrong, and that's going to be a detriment to our conversation. Or one of the worst things is coming to a conversation and saying, I already know what you think. This is what you think and what you believe, and you're sitting there going, I don't think that. I don't believe that. And so we're already off. And so I would think a fixed point of reference has to be that truth exists. That we're not just going to exist with a mindset of we can never know anything. There's no facts that are out there. There's no realities that are out there. We're just all making it up as we go along. And so from the starting point of truth, I think you very easily get to an understanding of who God is and reference that in terms of, since there is a God, has he said anything that would be important for our conversation and for our consideration? And I believe that he has. And I think there would be maybe some wide margins of how we could agree upon some of the things that he said. We might not all like what he said, but he has said something. We can verify that. Right.
And that to me is really the basis of even the name Same Blood. Right, we've talked about this on the podcast a bit. Just this idea that we're all created by God with the same intrinsic value, the same kind of baseline value as people, right? Because of who we are and because we're created by God. But also, for me personally, it's a reference to the idea that we're all covered by the same blood, right?
Yeah,
and this idea even of a common grace, right? And so that's what God's given me. That's what he's given all of us. And so that should be something that I give to other people.
Yeah.
Right. And that I would hope to receive from other people is this understanding and that this baseline of value. And I think that's actually one of the problems that we have as a society, is that there's not a baseline of actually valuing other people. It's like people's value is in some people's eyes, right? And loud people on the internet. Mm-hmm. People's value, even as just their intrinsic value, is based on whether or not they agree with you or not. And if they disagree with you, you'd rather they were just not existent at all. Mm-hmm. It'd be better off if the world didn't have you in it, because you don't share the same thoughts that I do on what's going on today. And I think that's a huge problem. And it's like, if you start there, I don't even know, there's nowhere to go, because that's sort of an all or nothing, you either agree or get out of here, and that's a place where you can't go anywhere.
There's a good book. It's Emerson and Smith's book, Divided by Faith. If you've referenced that on the show, then you know that the more ardently you strive to create a position where I'm right, you're wrong, then the conversation invariably devalues itself or devolves into I'm good, you're bad. And that's a terrible, I mean, we just kind of have to own the fact that we've put ourselves in that category sometimes as evangelicals. I will speak and call myself an evangelical, to just say that, you're right or I'm right and you're wrong, I'm good, you're bad, is for some people a logical step, but I think it's an unnecessary step. Mm-hmm. I can be right about something and still consider myself to be helping you, and still posture myself as helping you, and still learn from you in the process of helping to align with some of the things that I would consider to be foundational truths. And so I think that's an important distinction, that sometimes the jump from this is right, that's wrong, I'm right, you're wrong, I'm good, you're bad, happens so easily in the circles that I find myself in, that I'm like, whoa, let's tap the brakes for just a second.
Right.
Let's not go there like that. That's wrong.
Right, absolutely. And the idea that I would have the market cornered on what life experiences are valid or invalid is incredibly ignorant. It's short-sighted. The idea that I would have the full context of your life, is something that I have really been through even just the process of recording this podcast, taking a look at for myself and realizing, okay, I had a higher opinion of my own ability to sort of read other people's life experiences, and sort of feel like, okay, I do know what's going on here a little bit. Like, I kind of have a good grasp on it. And then as I've been doing the podcast, one of the things that I've been trying to do is to say, I don't know anything. Let's start from a place of, I know that I value you as a person, and I would really like to learn about your life and let you educate me on what's going on what you've experienced, what you've been through, and then we'll go from there, and I'll let your life and your experiences educate my opinion instead of the other way around. Yeah. And that's been incredibly eye-opening for me, and I'm very grateful that that's happened, and that's something that continues to happen with this podcast.
Can I totally get this show censored?
Do it.
But I've done it a lot on my show, and so anybody that's followed and watched the Way Forward broadcast that we do with my pastor friend from Illinois, or the Erskin Music Show, know that I wasn't a big supporter of President Trump. I'm not a big Donald Trump.
Way.
So you can just edit this part out.
You mean there are people who don't like Donald Trump?
Here's one of the issues that I had, is that, as a conservative, there are some policies that I would look at on their face and I would say, I totally agree with the policy. But the implementation of the policy was so poorly done that I thought, how am I, and I've got two kids, they're growing into their teenage years, and they're watching the world around them, and they're making some assumptions about things. How can I talk to and devalue people in the way that is seen to them publicly, and promote that as something that, well, the end justifies the means. The policy justifies the way that you then talk to people. I can't endorse that because that taints everything related to the policies. And so on our show, we very, I thought, methodically and meticulously spent some time saying, here's the reasons why we're not going to vote for Donald Trump. And then everybody automatically assumed that I was going to vote for Joe Biden, which we did. What we did is we went and we researched all the candidates, found out tons of information, and then we put forward a third party candidate. And I'm in cooperation with their office in South Carolina because I would like them to run for president in 2024. So we're trying to start a grassroots movement for Tim Scott. And
Tim Scott is an absolute man. When you listen to that guy talk, you just go, wow.
Yeah.
Holy cow, this guy.
And he's actually done stuff. And he's transparent. And it's all the different things our countries need. So anyway, Tim Scott, have us on your show. We'll say some good things. Or you come on this show, actually.
Yeah, please.
You come on this show and then come on my show, The Way Forward. And we'll boost up your candidacy in 2024.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, it's those kind of things that I think is lost in the discussion of people just jumping wholeheartedly to say, okay, we want these policies and we don't care how we get there. I don't think is a proper response to watching injustice take place and discriminatory comments being made. I don't think you can just whitewash those and say, well, that's okay. Everybody in politics just kind of has to do dirty stuff to get their point across. I think that's unacceptable.
I think that Donald Trump is a byproduct of the world we live in, where for decades and decades, there are groups in the country that were basically told, we don't care about your opinion for a long time. And this isn't a defense, because there's a saying that I read in a book called Love and Respect. It's a marriage book, but there's a saying where it says you can be right but wrong at the top of your lungs. This idea of like the base what you're trying to do, you might be valid, but then the way that you do it does matter, and you could be wrong because of how you go about it, and the impact could be the exact opposite of what you're trying to have it be. You know,
absolutely.
And so, to me, I look at it, and I look at the way that Donald Trump talks, and you go, man, and the way that he interacts with people, and you're just like, wow, I don't understand why you would do that. I don't understand why you would say that or how you would say it that way, you know? And you just go, there's no way anybody's going to hear that any other way than that, you know? So, but again, I think that is a byproduct of the problem that we face as one of the problems we face as society, which is that there are people who it's like this idea, I'm better than you, or I'm good, you're bad, where there's groups of people who it's like, we've been basically said, you're bad, right? And you just need to kind of shut up and disappear somewhere, or your opinions aren't wanted. And those people, there's these different groups of people who it's like, they feel like they've been told your input into the conversation is not wanted. Yeah. You just need to listen and then do whatever is, you know, sort of told to you and carry on. And so because of that, he basically spoke to that. And he appealed to that part of what's gone on and what people have perceived about what, you know, what's happening to them. Sure. And a lot of politicians do that. He just appealed in a very, very, very brash way that definitely you listen to it and you go,
came unhooked there.
Yeah. You listen to it and you go, what, why in the world did you just say that? Like, what, even if I agreed with what you were trying to do, I can't agree with what you said. Like, you couldn't. And so I completely understand. And there's this part of me that understands like what he's doing politically, because what he's doing is energizing and talking to a group of people who felt like nobody cared about him. But then I also look at it and you go, but the way that you're saying it, you're basically, by saying it a certain way, you are telling a massive chunk of people, I don't want you a part of this conversation either. Yeah. You're sort of doing that. But I feel like that's where politics are. That's where the conversations in general are in this country.
And so let me swing the pendulum to the other side. I mean, I'll put this out there on the table with these pistachios. We'll put pistachios here, the shells here, and then we'll put Black Lives Matter. Can we put I don't know if you can do that and post it, but Black Lives Matter, we'll just put it right here on the table. And I'll just simply say that the pendulum has swung to the other side, where there's a group of disenfranchised people who have said, wait a minute, nobody's listening to us. We can't seem to get justice. We can't seem to get a response from people who matter. And so now we're going to go out and we're going to promote the cause and let people know that Black Lives Matter, and then use, here again, the sort of rubric that's been presented, any means necessary to get the point across, because apparently that's what America listens to. Any means necessary to get the point across. We have a valid point. You're going to listen to it, even if we have to burn the country down to be able to do it. And I've got so many evangelical leaders, and we talked about this on our show, who sit back and they go, man, how can you support Black Lives Matter? And I'm like, I absolutely don't. How can you even say anything, maybe even favorable toward Black Lives Matter? Most of the time I don't. But here's what I do say. I do say that for all the evangelicals that are upset about Black Lives Matter, that's extremely hypocritical to me from my vantage point and my personal experience, because Black Lives Matter is essentially a referendum on church discipleship. And I've called it that on many different occasions. These are the kids that didn't come to your youth group because they were not welcome there. These are the kids who wanted to say something and wanted to maybe push against the norm, but we don't really have time for that. That's really not our culture. That's really not our concern. We really don't, plant churches in those parts of town. We go from those parts of town to other places that are nicer. And so what would you expect would happen? Those people didn't just disappear. They weren't just vaporized. They just grew up knowing and understanding that the church and the voice of the church is not a place where they're going to be heard, or the church is not going to come alongside them to advocate for justice. And so if somebody will do it, and Black Lives Matter certainly is well funded enough to do it and vocal enough to do it, then we'll follow that movement. And so it's not a case of, here's a group that we need to advocate for. There's a void that was filled because there were people who rightfully stood in that place who said, we don't have time for that. We're going to do something else. Let's go build a bigger building, or let's go to another part of town, or let's get involved in something else, or let's be in the political right, and this is what you reap, what you sow. This is what you got.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is the Black Lives Matter and the Donald Trump messaging and that, like, the two sides of this coin, right? And you look at it and you go, we get what we deserve as a country. We get what we allowed to happen, mostly because of our own passiveness, our own contentment with whatever is just going on around us. We're not going to look outside of our small group and our small little world and we go, this is good, so everything's good.
Yep.
I know I personally have been guilty of that, and that's something I've been attempting to change and work on, because I realize, okay, I don't know. I've been sitting here and I have not listened. I have not looked at other people's life experiences. I've taken what people said and go, it doesn't match up with my life, so it must not be true.
Yeah. And myself included, I'm ready to put myself in that category. All of us were probably sat there and played video games before and we're like, maybe we should be doing something more. Probably should be reading something. Maybe there's somebody that needs help. All right, let's go to the next level. All right, let's go to the next. So, we've all... Maybe you didn't do that, but I know I probably have.
No,
more often than.
We're so distracted.
Yeah,
we're so distracted, and I think it actually creates two problems, and that is one, because a lot of times we're distracted by the content from our phones, social media, the stories that we hear, and there's a part of me that thinks that, one, we know too much about everything that happens all over the world, and even in other parts of the country. Because and too little about what's actually happening right around us.
That's well said.
Because I know that I'll watch a story and I'm like, oh, something's happening in Wisconsin, right? And you go, what's Wisconsin? And then I'm like, man, now that's going to affect how I live in Dallas, in the world around me. As if somehow the people involved in this incident in Wisconsin, and the handful of people involved, right, that they somehow actually represent the people I'm interacting with every day. And I let that impact what's going on. But I don't actually know the people around me. I don't actually know them enough to know if this could happen. Is this possible? What's really going on around me? So we take the fact that we hear about all the stuff happening in all these other places, and we go and we take that and we apply it to our world without actually learning what's actually going on around us in our world. And so we're living with way too much information and too little information. And so we're just making very, very poor decisions about the world around us. And it's coming out of both ignorance and overstimulation. Yeah. And I think that just makes a massive problem.
One response to that is I posted a video, this was several months back, with the Ahmaud Arbery shooting, once that came out and people were responding to that. And I just walked down, and it was almost at a whim. I was going jogging, and I thought, I'm just going to turn on my camera. And so I'm passing by the house, and okay, here's my neighbor Majel and Deborah, and here's the next house is Andrew and Nancy, and then here's the next house, it's Tammy and Leroy, and then here's the next house, and I'm just going down my neighborhood, and I said, I'm very comfortable jogging down my neighborhood, but I try to be intentional to know who my neighbors are, to be a good neighbor to the people in my neighborhood. And, the commentary in some places, unfortunately, it is that there is, some sense of fear when people maybe are in certain neighborhoods, but that's not my neighborhood. And so I wanted people to realize that, yes, this is a problem on one hand for some people, but it's not a problem for all black people everywhere. And there were so many people that reached out to me and said, we really appreciate you posting something that is not all black people that go outside of their house are scared every time they walk out the front door because, Whitey is looking for them and, Karen's going to call the cops on them. And, we've never had anything of those things happen, although I do recognize that those things do happen.
Right.
And so I want to hold both sides of that. But then maybe like we were talking about locally, I want to be able to express what my reality is while at the same time acknowledging that there is some injustice that needs to be addressed.
Right, and I think that's really where the conversation seems to fall apart in the public discourse, if you will, and that is everybody is okay bringing out the worst things that happen, right? But we're a country of 330 million people, right? And this is not every single community is not having these awful situations every single day, right? That doesn't mean they're not happening, and it's not a real world experience, right? But that does mean that there is both the thing that you need to be aware of and to look out for and we need to work on. But then there's also the thing that you can hold up and you can say, look, but like there's also this and this is a good thing. And it doesn't mean you're denying the existence of the wrong to say, okay, so that's there and we need to look at this and we need to work on this. But also if you're working on this is kind of the goal here, right?
Right.
And so here's some examples of situations where it's like, okay, so this doesn't appear to be a problem here. So why is that? Let's look at these situations and go, okay, well, if this is the goal, then you need to look at both instead of just going, here's a problem, here's another problem. And it's like, well, so is there any place where this is not a problem? Is there any place where you look at it and you go, okay, well, we seem to be taking the steps the other direction here. We seem to be in a better place. Well, how do we get here?
Sure.
And that's the part where you need to have both conversations, but we're not having both conversations. And so it gets so one-sided. And then there are people who are just existing, right? And they're like, well, I have great relationships with my neighbors who are black, white, Hispanic. Like we have a neighborhood where we get along and like we take care of each other. And they're like, so do I need to change the way that I view my neighbors because we aren't dealing with these things, And that's where I think there's so many people who are just sitting there and they're going, I see that there's a problem, but I also see that it's not the entire world, it's not the entire country. And so can we look at those, but then also acknowledge that there's some places that might have some answers or some solutions, or at least something to look at and go, that's okay. There's hope, and I think those people that are sort of in that place in the middle are looking for like, where do we go? And I think a lot of them are just being very quiet because they're like, I can't get behind this messaging and I can't get behind this messaging. So where's the messaging that says in the middle that goes, okay, let's look around. Let's open our eyes, get some perspective. Let's work on what needs to be worked on. Let's celebrate the positives as we look at what needs to be addressed and have those conversations, And I think that's where I truly believe the majority of the country lives in that world.
Yeah.
They live in that place in the middle.
And I've tried to apply that to our situation in Nashville. As a derivative of our show that we do called The Way Forward, we've connected with an organization called Project Connect. Alan Murdoch and those guys, they have a tremendous board, and they're doing an incredible job of not just feeding the homeless, but giving them job skills, life skills, and preparing them to have, a life of sustainability, gospel-centered. So we have our 4-point project where we discuss, pray, go, and give, are the 4 points of just trying to broaden our experience and our horizons and our understanding. They have a tremendous work program. And so we've partnered with them to be able to do those things, because people ask, there's this national problem that's going on, how do I get involved in that? And just being able to localize that and say, okay, in this community, in Nashville, here's what's going on, and here's areas where you can get involved, and here's some of the positive things that we're seeing as a result of that. I'm also, and I guess if anybody from the Justice Circle in Nashville were to watch this, I guess I should give a quick shout out to that. We've newly formed a commission that's going to be reporting to the Biden administration, I think in February. And we're part of a 25-city pilot program where we're essentially trying to address some of the needs of our city and how we might go about bringing together different community groups, but also with an understanding that there are some disparities that can be addressed if we'll work together and we'll collaborate. And so we're addressing the areas of education disparities, healthcare disparities, and any law enforcement disparities that might be present in Nashville. And so a newly formed Justice Circle, what we're doing is trying to bring people in with expertise in these levels and broaden our understanding of what are the needs resident to Nashville, where we live, and address it from that standpoint. Because I think you can get so, the national problem and all these things that are out there that you forget the city, the block, the house that you live in, and maybe miss some of those opportunities to really be involved and see some significant changes take place.
And that's where people have to go if they really want to see change. You got to put down your phone, put down close your computer, step outside and go meet your neighbors, go have conversations, go put together groups. I think one of the things that a lot of people assume is that there are people already doing these things, that there are a lot of people already working on the solutions. And the reality is there just aren't. That's not necessarily happening everywhere, but it should be. Mm-hmm. And, I think people make that assumption. Good intentioned people who would want to be part of the solution are going, somebody's probably already working on this. But the reality is, no, a lot of times they aren't, or it's scattered. It's not organized. You don't have a cohesive group that's trying to do something.
You said one of the biggest keys there, and this has been eye-opening to me, is that organization is hard. Mm-hmm. It's a hard thing to bring the office of the mayor with law enforcement, with healthcare professionals, with educational professionals of any type of credential together to agree. We're talking about common ground. To agree that there's changes and some variation that needs to take place there, and then move action steps forward and collaborate with people who are doing. That's a hard thing to do. It is. On any level. And I have, I've got some really good friends that are up in inner city Chicago, and they're doing tremendous work. I've got some friends that are out in Sacramento, inner city, doing some tremendous work. And I'll call them sometimes and I'm like, man, I'm so frustrated that we're not moving this faster, that we're going farther, where they're doing more. And they're like, we're just glad that you're doing something. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of people just, they throw their hands up, either paralysis by analysis and say, well, I don't even know where I can get involved. Or, it's just so hard to get the inertia to be able to move initiatives forward that people are just like, we couldn't even get anything going. Just do something as opposed to doing nothing. And the attitude of wanting to do something and continuing to have that, I think a lot of times they've commented and said, even if you just do a little bit, that's a lot in this conversation, because that's momentum. It's forward progress.
Yeah, absolutely. And the truth is, just having some conversations with some people, just showing that the reality of the world is not as divided as your Facebook feed might be, or your Twitter feed, or Instagram, or wherever you're getting your social media information. The actual world in front of you. You can sit down with somebody who you disagree with on some things. You voted for different people. You support different whatever. But you can sit down with them and you can go, well, let's talk about what we do have in common. Let's talk about what we both want from the world, for ourselves, for our kids, for our families. And you're going to find so much common ground, and you can find things to work on. You don't have to, you don't have to be you accept the whole platform, or we can't talk. It's, that's not actually how the world works or should work. But I feel like that's how people are approaching it. It's like, oh, wait, hold on. You voted for who? Well, we can't talk. And it's like, no, I wanted to talk about this. Like, it's not.
Or they're going to hear that you didn't vote for their guy, and so they're not even going to ask you who you voted for.
We're out. You're
canceled. Canceled.
Oh, man. All right. So we've sort of talked around this, but to get specific, because one of the things that's the hot topic, right? Diversity. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's a hot topic because it means different things are coming from different people, and there's different reasons behind it. But for you, where have you seen and how would you describe diversity working in just in the best way possible? Like, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, so some positive examples of diversity. I would maybe point to some of my experiences in college at East Tennessee State University.
Go Tom Brady.
So somehow I got appointed to be some kind of advocate of the diversity at that university. And we didn't do, I don't even think we did anything, but they recognized that it's in Johnson City, Tennessee. They recognized it in a very white very Southern context, there needed to be some discussions about diversity because of the inclusion of other students that were there and a variety and a multiplicity of students from other countries who were descending upon that university. And so I found it interesting that being able to get different people in the room together and have discussions really did kind of open my eyes up to a different vantage point, that people, I guess, have vested interest and cannot easily be caricatured as, okay, this is that group, okay, we're going to marginalize them. But to allow the door to swing wide in terms of representation, entry. Many people don't know this. Probably everybody in East Tennessee knows this, that Johnson City is one of the largest capitals for homosexuality and transgender groups. It's just kind of tucked away in the mountains there. And every year we would have Gay Pride Week at that university, and you'd have the drag shows, and you'd have the Culp Center was rented out. I don't know what they do currently these days, but that was always one of those very contentious weeks where Christians are out painting stuff on the sidewalks, and there's picketing that's going on, and so it just really kind of was an eye-opening experience for me very early on to just look at that and say, I don't know that this is the best approach. I don't know if this is the best response to what's going on here. And so in a lot of my classes, I actually got a chance to know the guy who was the president of the Gay Pride organization. It was one of my classes. And so I said, hey, let's go out and let's have lunch. He agreed. It was gracious. He agreed to have lunch, and we sat down. Very gracious guy. We don't and didn't agree on very much of anything, except we had a very civil conversation. I felt like I was able to hear his story and his backstory, share a little bit of my story and my backstory and why I'm so passionate about telling people about Jesus and pointing people in that direction. And then I had a wonderful professor, Amber Kinzer, as liberal as you could possibly imagine. She was confused that her daughter would actually want to wear a dress. And she thought there was something intrinsically wrong with her daughter because the way that she had been educated is just in such a liberal fashion was causing her confusion. And I'm like, there should not be confusion, but she would just drag down any type of male patriarchy that she saw in society. And she was talented, wonderful. Amber Kinzer, if you're out there, one of the most wonderful professors I have ever heard in terms of class discussion. But I felt like there was a lack of representation for the vantage point that I had, which is that all men aren't bad.
Hold on.
I
don't know if we can say that.
Felt like that should be at least articulated. And so she graciously, this was like extracurricular assignments that she would give me and just say, hey, I've been reading Bishop John Shelby Spong, who is the defrocked Catholic priest who went incredibly liberal, and just some of his ruminations. And so I'm reading through some of his, why he's railing against fundamentalism and various things that was kind of in her wheelhouse of what she was processing. And so in her office, I would come to her class, hear her class, schedule office hours with her specifically so I could talk to her about some of the things that I was reading in that book and be willing to read outside of just the norm of, okay, here's the case for Christ. Here's, those are all wonderful. C.S. Lewis, Mere Christianity. That's right. Great. I read all that stuff. But then reading people who are outside of that and then having a plane of discussion to be able to say, okay, I can see how you got these 3 steps here, but maybe one of these steps I want to question because it seems foundational to where it is, where you're going. And then introduce some other things and try to evangelize in the process of that. So it was a great experience. And I would say college really opened my eyes up to diversity. And I think that's a good model because it's a safe model. At least it should be in the educational process, that you bring this diversity and you unify that diversity within a set of curriculum and you have unity and diversity working together, which is the principle of a university. But anyway,
it sounds like the only problem that I would have with the way you went about it is that you didn't go into your professor's office and say, I'm good, you're bad, and yell at her and demand that she accept that what you're saying is true. And that indeed...
She was smarter than me.
And indeed,
she probably still is.
Oh, man. So...
Dr. Kinzer, if you're out there.
Dr. Kinzer, you want to come on a podcast?
She would do such a great job.
I have no doubt. And honestly, those are the types of conversations that I love personally, I don't mind being challenged, and I think that's something that a lot of people need to embrace, but they also have to understand that when you get challenged, it's going to show up whether or not you have a foundation for what you believe or don't. And and honestly, I think that's one of the reasons why we're so averse to having real conversations, really being vulnerable, letting other people have the floor, and giving them the respect that they should be afforded. Is that they're afraid that they might actually hear something that challenges them in a way that they can't defend, then they're not prepared for. And we're not really prepared to be shaken like that as people. Our foundations a lot of times are very weakly set, and they're not based in something that we really know to be true. It's just something we heard somebody else say, and it sounds good and it feels good, so we're going to run with it. And if I keep saying it loud enough that you don't want to reply, I'm going to sound like I'm true all of the time, and I'm going to just keep going about my life. And that's where you get people just yelling at each other. Like, I don't think we're talking. I think we're painting angry slogans on sidewalks and screaming things at each other, and not actually hearing or wanting to really be heard. It's more just wanting to yell and hear our own voices.
And one of the biggest problems, I think, is that people aren't eating enough pistachios.
I would agree with that.
A great source of protein. So for those of you who work out and are health conscious, eat more protein. It'll help your mind, kind of solidify some things. But I did want to say, on that point of not being challenged and not being willing to, divulge, where'd you get this from? What's your source of authority? What's your foundation? I always want to point people to the Bible, because in doing so, I am able to point to an authority that's outside of myself. I can't reference myself as being smarter than anybody else that's in the room. When I go to the Bible, I have to depend upon what has been revealed to me from Scripture. And, I'm comfortable with doing that. I'm humble enough to say that I let God be true and every man be a lie. There's things that probably I said and or believed 5 or 10 years ago that I don't know that I necessarily believe anymore, because I'm completely fallible and have shown myself to be that. But God's word is infallible, and as a touchstone and a source of truth, I'm very open to tell people this is where I got that from. Well, you can argue chapter and verse, but here's the context, here's the language, here's the argument, here's how it applies. I think it's always been an effective means for me to be able to say, okay, I'm exposed. You got me. I got that from the Bible.
Right. Well, and to me, I hate the idea that, and that's so prevalent out there, that says you look inside yourself for truth. You'll know. Follow your heart, right? Just this idea. Because to me, if what I believe is only true because I believe it and it comes from inside, that's terrifying. That would be so terrifying if what I believe was only based on, or primarily based on, how I felt about a situation. Because then you can almost guarantee it's not true, because it's not based on anything that's solid. And like, as you said, opinions change, and they should. You should evolve as a person as you grow and mature, and you have to base it on something. And Scripture, to me, is the foundation that I've built my whole life on. That's what I've built everything on, because it's not me. Like, as you said, it's not me. It's relying on the infallibility of God, and also kind of circling back around to where we are today, that truth says that whether I agree with you or disagree with you, whether we have anything in common or everything in common, your value as a human to me should not change. And your value to God does not change. And that is what I should be treating you through, is through that truth. And that is what I should afford you. And that's the grace that I should show you. And if everybody did that, you could at least have conversations. And that would be a good place to start. So to sort of wrap things up here, I think we've been going for like an hour, which is kind of awesome. I'm a fan. A lot of the episodes
get a lot to edit.
No, we're going to post the whole thing. That's what we do here. We don't edit, man. We don't cut things.
All right.
So whatever you said earlier about censoring.
Get a little dancing Black Lives Matter thing here. Post edit.
Exactly. So to bring it all back around, if you were going to leave people with an idea, an actionable item, what are you going to do, right? What could they do today, tomorrow, if they want to see the world different, if they want to see change in themselves and in the world around them?
This is an easy question. You've asked me a couple of shaky questions there, I guess, so to speak, but this is an easy one. Get your passport and go anywhere else in the world. We spent... as a family, I've been to India 5 times, and we were there for I was there for 4 months last year. Family was there for 2 months with me, and been to Africa a number of times. We're planning on doing another trip to Africa, Peru, Brazil, Nepal, Thailand, and every time I have gone out of this country, there has been some new revelation of culture that has been just foisted upon me as a result of the experiences that I've had there that have helped me to expand my understanding. I don't know that you can necessarily read your way to this type of, cultural diversity when you actually go and walk among the people and live among the people. And, if it's a 2-week trip, that's fine. That's great. But if you can stay there for longer and really get a sense of the culture and how different people approach problems in life, and how things that are problems in one place are not problems other places, but you can't deny the fact that this is a problem here and this is a context that just shapes your understanding. I would say get a passport, travel, not as a vacationary, but as somebody who seeks to do good and learn from other cultures. I learned so much from our time in India, and looking to go back there in Bangladesh, and as soon as possible, as soon as things begin to open up again.
Absolutely. Traveling the world has been one of the best things that I've done in my life. And it's one of the things I'm most grateful for, because it gives you a perspective you just can't get sitting at home.
Yeah.
Watching movies or reading books. It's not there.
Yeah.
Well, so say your last name for me one more time.
Anavitarte.
Anavitarte. All right. I shouldn't want to mess it up at the very end. Erskin Anavitarte. Thank you, sir, so very, very much for being on the podcast. Thank you for listening. Now, if people want to follow you on all of the socials and all of the places, how do they do that?
Yeah, so that's Erskin Music. Find just Erskin Music. That'd be Instagram, and that should get them to, or just Erskin, all caps.
And how do you spell that? Is it
Erskin?
Okay.
Yeah.
I was in my head. I was like, is it either E or I at the start? And I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. ER. Okay. Sweet. So again, check him out. Follow him on all of the platforms. And again, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you guys for having me.
If you are listening, again, this conversation you just listened to does not count as the conversation you need to have today, tomorrow, and the days going forward. You just listened to one. You didn't participate. So please go have a conversation with somebody else. And if you enjoyed this conversation, share it. Post it. Maybe this will be something that you can use to start a conversation.
Ask us for part 2.
Yes. Ask us for part 2, and we will deliver. And as always, thank you for listening, watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.